Respected viewers, Assalamu alaikum. My name is Ali Abbas Rajan and welcome once again to IBN TV's brand new series called The Hotspot. In our last episode, we looked at Islamophobia, a growing issue affecting many Muslims in the UK. We discussed the scale of this issue with students from all over the UK and finally established roles we as Muslims can take while in university in order to protect Islam and portray its true image. Life as a Muslim can be quite challenging in Western countries due to the pressures one is likely to face in their social life, especially when in university. The Western lifestyle can be quite an attractive one to give into, and so what we want to know today is how Muslims maintain their Islamic identity when studying remote from their accustomed environment. Moreover, how do they cope with the negative perception people tend to have of Islam set up by acts of extremism, such as the Boston bombing? An article from USA Today in 2011 claims that in a survey of 1,029 Americans, 52% are worried about Muslim radicals. That is more than half. Is this the case throughout North America? Today we invite students from the USA and Canada onto our show to give us an insight on the social pressures Muslims may face when studying in university. Can I please welcome them on to the hot seat? Can you please introduce yourself and tell us what you're studying at university?
I'm Sana Kausar Jaraj. I study at the University of Toronto, in Toronto, Canada. I'm doing the Nutritional Sciences program, and under the Faculty of Life Science.
My name is Asad Ali Hirji, and I'm from Dar es Salaam. I'm studying in Canada, University of Toronto. I just completed my first year studying computer science.
My name is Imran Dalla. I am studying in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. I study at McMaster University and I'm in my second year of the Bachelor of Commerce.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Afshan Abdul Razak. I study at the University at Buffalo in New York. I'm currently in my junior year and I study economics.
Hi everyone, I am Salman Kareem. I'm at Williams College, that's what I'm representing today. And it's in Massachusetts. It's actually in a town called Williamstown.
What factors did you consider when choosing University of Toronto?
Definitely the majors that they offer, and the city itself. Like the fact that Toronto is a very easy place to live in. That was a big factor that was part of it. And also the fact that it's very easy to get a job in Toronto, like especially for students. I understand in other parts of the world it's hard for students to work, or they're not allowed at all. There's certain restrictions, like you can just work on campus. But the fact that like we have co-op programs, we have after 6 months you're allowed to work anywhere in the country, even though there is a time limit, like you're just allowed 20 hours a week. So that was a big factor.
You said it's easy to live there. How is it easy to live there compared to other?
Toronto is a very multicultural city. It's very accepting. It's very accommodating. The fact that I'm a hijabi, the fact that I'm from Africa, it didn't make as much of a difference as compared to my friends in the States or in England.
So your main priorities were basically the way you live
and
over
well,
there
the
and
school itself, obviously, like the ranking, its position in the world.
Basically, choosing the university, I looked at many things, but mainly I focused on the university that was specialized in the field that I wanted to study in. Looking at computer science, I found out by talking with people that University of Toronto is one good university for that field, and also the fact that it offered the co-op system, the co-op study system, in which I could work for a year to get my degree.
My main aim was to see which university makes me work the hardest to get in, see what if their program works well with what I'm looking for, the flexibility in being able to choose my major, and basically the cost effectiveness.
Well, as a student applying from here and not getting to visit the United States because that was quite expensive, I actually had a college counselor at my school who helped a lot because he explained what kind of college would be good for me, what kind of community would be good for me, and that's something that we don't have here. So I had to rely on word of mouth, and also I did a lot of research, and ultimately it actually came down to cost as well, because that was another thing, that financial aid, how much of the cost can the college cover, stuff like that. Other than that, I knew that the college that I was going to had the courses I was looking into. So it was physics and chemistry mainly, and that's how I ended up with chemistry right now.
And what were your main priorities when choosing this university? Did they differ from your parents?
Yeah, definitely. Basically, my parents wanted me to go to a university which is close to home, close to family, where I would be closer to my religion, closer to people in my religion, be accessible to places like where I could have good halal food. Whereas I was looking basically at what the best university is, where I could get the most out of what I want to do, the best opportunities, the best extracurricular activities.
And did you find both what your parents want and what you want at this university?
There's a balance amongst between what I wanted and what they wanted, and I believe we went into a compromise. Well, I try my best to stay in religion, in my religion, although being not far away from the mainstream Islamic areas. And I got exactly what I wanted to do from in terms of studying.
My parents looked at the family point of view, the fact that we have family there, even though I don't stay with them. They wanted me to stay somewhere where we have family in case anything goes wrong. And the safety of the place, the fact that the Jamaat, like how active the Jamaat is, how close by the mosque is. So they considered those things, and although those things are important, they weren't the top priorities on my list.
I would say that my parents, their priority was safety, and then financial aid as well. For me, it was safety wasn't there. I wasn't that afraid, and it's funny you mentioned that because being in the United States, that was what my parents were afraid of. They didn't think as a Muslim I should go to the United States initially, but then I convinced them.
So Afshan, can you tell us about the Islamic presence at your university?
Well, I wouldn't say we have a lot of Muslim students. I want to say we have roughly 100 Muslim students on campus. But, and in addition to that, we also have a Muslim Student Association there, which holds quite a few events on campus to promote Islamic awareness and stuff like that.
Is MSA the only one, or are there others as well?
Just the one.
So where I am right now, we actually have, I would say 20 to 25 strong Muslim students, and we also have an imam. We have an imam whom we call the Muslim chaplain.
Is it within your whole university, or?
Within our college, yes.
Okay.
Because we're a 2,000 student college, it's very small. And we do have like a Christian chaplain, we have a Jewish chaplain, so we even have a Muslim chaplain. And interestingly enough, he joined the same year that I did. So just like me, he's a sophomore, which is second year. And he actually joined because groups before petitioned for it. There were Muslims on campus who said that we want a Muslim chaplain. They already had a space actually where we could pray and stuff. So they petitioned for this, and other groups who were very, very understanding actually signed that petition and stood up as well to the college administration and said they need a Muslim chaplain, and we got one. His name is Bilal Ansari actually, and he's an amazing person.
So within these 20-30 Muslims at your university, have you guys formed any kind of organization, or is it just
Actually, from before, we did have a Muslim student union, and towards the end of my freshman year, I actually took over as one of the co-chairs. But now it's known as Muslim EAFs, because it changed its name a lot. Initially, it was the Muslim Student Association as well, but there is a bracket organization in North America called the Muslim Student Association, and we did not necessarily want to espouse their views, and we wanted to step away from them, so we are now called the Muslim EAFs. It's a play on our school, we're the EAFs, that's our mascot.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
This welcomes all diversity of Muslims?
It actually not only welcomes all Muslims, it welcomes everyone who is interested in going to Friday prayers, joining us for halakas, brunches where we discuss fiqh, we discuss other ideas like tariqas and Islamic schools of thought. So it's actually a diverse group of people, and we also have lots of non-Muslims who join. We also do lots of social things. We fundraise. So I would say it's bigger than the 20 people whom it is aimed for initially. Yeah.
And you said you participate, or your role is the co-chair this year?
Yes.
Tell us a bit on what you do as a co-chair.
Okay, so every year we have this thing called the Islamic Awareness Week, where 1 week we have colloquiums, we have speakers coming in, we have movie showings, movie screenings, we have a local theater that joins with us, and we show movies that are related to Islam, and we try to get the community engaged. My role, unfortunately, comes down to contacting everyone. As a co-chair, I'm actually, my friend and I, we're two co-chairs. His name is Mizel Badruddin, he's from Indonesia. So we actually end up communicating to everyone. We end up contacting all the people who need to come, the speakers, whatnot. We have to be on top of that. And then luckily enough, we have an active group that manages food, that manages venues, all that stuff. But when there's downtime, that is not Islamic Awareness Week, then we're in charge of holding weekly meetings, and we also make sure that there's Jummah and there's a khatib for Jummah. So there's someone who's, if Imam Ansari is away, then we have someone who's going to give khutbah and stuff. So that kind of thing, managing stuff.
Well, there is a huge presence. I could say the counted number, the statistic actually is around 1,500 Muslim students. Most of them work towards the mainstream Sunni faith, and there's you could say every other person I meet is a Muslim.
In the UK, we have societies, Ahlul Bayt societies throughout universities and a couple of others. Do you guys have organizations or anything similar in Canada?
Definitely. We have McMaster Muslim Student Association that represents the Muslim body as a whole at the university. They cater to all main things like prayers, advocating for Muslim students in the university. But to narrow it down, we have our own McMaster Ahlul Bayt Islamic Society. And we work towards the smaller field that we look at. We look at what us as students who get their teachings from the Prophet and from his family. We host events like the Imam Hussein blood drive, annual blood drive. We have a Who is Muhammad event to educate the people who our Prophet was and how he lived his life.
Okay. And the MSA, do you guys ever work together?
Yes, we try to collaborate in some fields which are of mutual interest, like the Who is Muhammad event. We go towards them, we tell them we believe in the same Prophet, and we believe that we can work at each other's advantage.
There's been a lot of news about the MSA having, segregation involved in the organization in terms of the different Muslim sects. Have you witnessed any of this, and any comments on this?
It's interesting. It's interesting that you mentioned that, Ali Bas, because our organization is no more called the MSA. At one point, it was called the Muslim Student Association, but now we call it the Muslim Eves, like I told you earlier. And the reason behind that is that we realized the MSA was somehow involved in some sort of segregation between the sects of Islam. And our group, the group that is present at Williams, and many of the groups that are present in most colleges, don't necessarily agree with what's happened sometimes when minorities or certain groups are segregated and persecuted, or not even persecuted, but not involved or not included. Because we wanted to go for a more inclusive thing. Because one of my friends actually always says that Islam is about unity. So if we do not necessarily include everyone, then we won't be able to defend ourselves from others. If we persecute ourselves within ourselves, it's the Kiswahili saying, "Umoja ni nguvu, tengano udhaifu." It's just, if we're all split, there's no wall that needs to be crushed. We're already bricks that are separated. It's just it's a very sad state of affairs. That's why we did not want to get involved with the MSA. I guess that was it.
Brilliant.
From my experience with the MSA, I've had the chance to actually talk to the executive members and work with them, volunteer with them, and they seem like the same people who believe in what I believe in. They believe in peace. They believe that violence is not really the answer to anything. And they were the same people who, after the Prophet's unfortunate movie that came out, they were the first ones to act towards it, the first ones to go ahead and tell people that this is not our Prophet. And they went all above boundaries just to explain to everyone that who Muhammad really was.
So you've never seen any sort of extremist behavior around?
Not in my experience.
What about in Muslims in general around your university?
Muslims in general, not really. You don't see any extremist behavior explicitly as far as my experience is concerned. You can see everyone gets hot-headed and stuff, and you can't really relate that to extremist behavior.
So you mentioned Ahlul Bayt Society. It's something you're starting right now.
Yes.
With alone, or is it with a group of friends?
It was started off by one group member who believed that there was a need for students who believe in the Ahlul Bayt to gather together, to feel more at home, to be able to participate in things and events like we hold bi-weekly Dua Kumail sessions and discussions, and there was a need for that, and that sister was ambitious enough to start the club, find a couple of friends, and take the group further. And now, alhamdulillah, we have around 150 members who participate in most of our events, show up to bi-weekly sessions. It creates an atmosphere where people from different backgrounds, from different places, regions, get to meet together and practice their faith.
So living in Canada and studying at UOT, how does your social life differ from the typical American college student?
It depends what you call social life. The social life I was brought up with was mainly family and friends, good friends. When I had gone there, I was all alone, but it took time for me to get some good friends. So by the time I had got the good friends, the social life of ours was basically the same. And I did not come up with much challenges because I was basically more busy with my studies and gave less attention to the other social life. The culture of ours and the people of those who study at the West is two different things.
So there was like a cultural shock?
Not really, it's just that because I was aware of it before I left, because
Okay.
I had studied at an international school, so I was already exposed to that shock. And basically when I went there, I knew what to expect, and because I knew what the different cultures I was going to get over there, so I strategically, I would say, chose my friends. That took a little bit of time, but because of the type of friends I chose there, I did not come up with much of a problem for the socializing aspect.
I wouldn't say it differs a lot because, like I said, Toronto is very multicultural. It's very accepting. I did think that being a hijabi, I wouldn't be able to go out or I would face challenges. But the thing is that the public transport system there is so excellent. I was able to go out on my own and come back at a reasonably late hour, and it wasn't a problem. So I don't think I really faced issues like that.
Okay, so there was no cultural shock because of the multicultural atmosphere?
That, and also because I have been to that part of the world before, so I knew what to expect.
Okay.
So
What about any obstacles or difficulties as a result of your faith?
well, there are different, you make different groups. So you have the mosque group, which when you go out with them, it's very easy obviously because it's Kojas, so they know where to go and what to. But then again, you have the university group. So there was one time that I was going out with a couple of Chinese friends, and we decided to go for breakfast. And I had researched the place and everything. But when we got there, it was closed. So they suggested to go to a nearby breakfast instead, but it was like a deli. And we went, and I was like, okay. And I entered, and first thing there was this, like, it was mainly a bar. And then we went, and it was very hard. So we did sit down, and the whole time I was complaining about how hungry I was. But then when we actually got there, I was stuck. I didn't know what to do because I wasn't expecting it to be, like, I was expecting it to be that first place. And so it was very hard. And these were new friends. And the thing is, when you join university, you don't want to mess up in any way. Like, you'll just go with the flow to make friends. So I couldn't really do anything, but the waitress came and took our order, and I didn't order anything. And she even brought water for us, but I wasn't sure about the glasses either because it was a bar. And so at that time, it was very uncomfortable. And then later on, I was speaking to my friends, and I had to explain to them why I could not eat there. And it was very different for them because when you talk to non-Muslims here in Dar, they still have a general idea of how it is for us Muslims. But for someone like an Asian who's grown up in North America, this was all so new to her. It was so foreign. And she didn't get what I was saying, but eventually they got it. So you do face these kind of problems, and I think you just need to
Work yourself around
You
it.
just need to work yourself.
So do you agree that there is a lack of awareness, Islam awareness over there, and that needs
Definitely, definitely. However multicultural it is, however many different types of people you see when you walk on the street, there is a large percent, mainly the locals, who do know that they are Muslims, but they do associate themselves with like the general idea of Muslims, but I don't think they really know what we really are going through living
Okay.
there.
Brilliant.
I have lots of friends who are non-Muslims, and also lots of friends who are Muslims and American, and also lots of friends who are non-Muslim and American. And the clear differences are that some of them drink. There's a big drinking culture in the U.S. actually, where I am maybe, but I think it's a U.S. thing. Lots of colleges, it's because lots of colleges where people are finally free from parents and whatnot, so they get into drinking and stuff. And that's one thing that's very prevalent, is that there's drinking culture. And I've actually pulled myself away from that, and lots of people have, regardless of their religion. But I think a lot of Muslims mostly, and a lot of other religious groups that are strongly against alcohol have divorced themselves from that. And I think that works out because we still have events and stuff. We still have gatherings that are fine without alcohol. The other two things are probably halal food and music. I personally listen to music and I'm fine with that, but some people don't, because there's always a spectrum. And I think when we talk to one another, we cater to make sure that everyone feels included. They don't have to step out. If they don't want to hear our music, you can just turn your music down. So that way in college, I mean, there's always that. Halal food-wise, the dining halls are actually very nice because they provide halal food, among other things like kosher food, vegan food, all that stuff. So I feel quite comfortable there.
How does your social life differ from an average American student's social life? Do you face any obstacles or, barriers when socializing?
You mean in terms of hijab?
That could be one of the ways.
Okay, well, see, before I came to the US, I was always under this misconception that since I wear a hijab, a headscarf, I would have to work, or rather try twice as hard to make friends or have my voice heard. But honestly, that was never really the case, and I was pleasantly surprised because, I mean, yes, people do treat women in headscarves significantly differently, but it's only on rare occasions that treatment is negative on campus. I feel like people are more pleasant towards people in hijab. They're more polite, and I feel like when you're having a conversation with a man, he actually focuses on, looks at your face and focuses on the conversation itself rather than, other factors such as like your physical appearance and stuff. Women, tend to ask questions and, just to gain like basic knowledge of why we wear the hijab and like a general understanding, which I feel is really good because, this way we can like eradicate all those misconceptions that the media creates about hijab, how it's like a symbol of oppression when we know it's not. So this shows people that they should not take what the media gives them at face value. Traveling with a hijab on can prove to be somewhat taxing because no matter what you do, people are always going to nervously, glance towards you. And then, there's always those random screenings where it's most likely always the hijabi who's always going to be, randomly picked to, be screened. But then I feel like if you put that into context with like the 9/11 attacks, I understand why these people take the measures that they do.
And have that negative connotation towards
right, yeah,
hijab.
and I understand why they take the measures that they do, and personally, like, I appreciate the extra security because, I'd rather be safe than sorry.
Okay, so basically this hijab, rather than being what you thought it would be, a barrier when it comes to socializing, it has helped you engage in conversation,
Right.
giving you a strong opportunity to kind of show what Islam really is in
Right.
regards to hijab.
Right.
Could this be because of this growing fashion industry? Designers like Rabia 7 and another one's called Abel Haraba, they're kind of growing this hijab fashion trend exponentially in the US. Do you think this might have kind of like brought a positive connotation or emotion feeling towards hijab? Because they're slowly bringing it out, onto the runways and having it showed, on models and shops. Do you think this has a factor? Does it play a role?
Yes, it does. But in a way, I also feel like it sort of defeats the purpose of hijab, because you have all these, models in hijab, and they're like on the runway for the whole world to see, and that's not the whole point of the hijab.
Agreed, because the Prophet does say modesty is part of your faith.
Exactly.
And the other side of the coin is basically this fashion industry ruining the purpose of hijab, the idea of modesty. So what do you think should be done with? Should this fashion industry kind of be abolished, or how would you assess the situation?
In a way, it's a good thing. It's like twofold. In a way, it's a good thing because it does promote Islamic awareness, and it promotes the hijab and takes away that whole idea of it being like a symbol of oppression. But then again, like I said, it defeats the whole purpose of the hijab.
Do you feel that the lack of family has an impact on your spirituality or behavior while in university?
Not much. I had some of my relatives whom I was not staying with, but I had their contact, and if I needed their help, they were always ready to get to me. But in terms of affecting my behavior, it was not much of a problem, because I basically realized that with freedom comes responsibility. And now
Definitely.
that I was all alone, I had to make responsible decisions. So whenever I had to think of making any decision, I just thought that if it was something correct I'm doing, and if I see that it's something that would be fine, I would just go ahead.
Where do you stay?
Off campus. I have my own apartment.
Do you have family nearby you?
Nearby, yes, but half an hour away.
How often do you see your family?
Well, it depends on the coursework, school, how that is going, but at every mosque event, every time there's mosque, you meet family.
So do you feel that lack of family presence affects you spiritually, or in terms of your Islamic behavior or anything?
For example, something like going to mosque. When I was in Dar in high school, I would go to mosque because my parents were going. I wouldn't question it, I just go along with them. But when I was in Toronto and when it was my decision to go to mosque, no one's gonna force you there because you're living independently. And so when I wasn't told to, I just wouldn't go. And then I realized I'm missing out because I do need to connect with my people, at least as much as possible. So I would go, and I guess having family there did help, definitely.
I used to live in family. I moved to Canada 4 years ago. And I did start off living with my uncle, but eventually once I moved out of the city of Toronto to go to Hamilton for university, I lived in the dorm rooms on campus.
Okay, and do you feel like this lack of family presence affected you spiritually, or made you lose track of your faith?
Well, it did influence me in a big way. Well, there's two ways you can react to, being completely cut off with family. In one way, you can completely go off your faith, mix in with non-Islamic people and, lose track of your religion. But the other way, personally, it made me more responsible of where I come from and what my parents taught me, and to own up to that and owe it to them and owe it to my community to represent them as a better Muslim.
So you said you live alone. Is it alone in a dorm, or is it alone in an apartment? Are there people next to you or living next door to you?
Yes, I live in a dorm room. Basically, I was lucky enough to get a single room, but I have rooms next to me with doubles, people living in double rooms, triple, quad rooms, and other singles.
And do you face any difficulties, coexisting with them in the same building?
Not as exactly coexisting, but there are troubles. There's been so many instances you get up to the elevator, get out, and you can smell alcohol in the hallway. You walk into your room, and because it's a Thursday night or a Friday night and everyone's partying, you can hear the noise, you can hear the music. And it gets challenging when you're trying to pray and you have people right next door drinking, partying, yelling, trying to lose your concentration. But I believe that's more of a test
Oh yes, certainly. But I feel like when we make the move to a new university, it's usually Islam that, you know, it has to make the move with us. So we're usually forced to adapt to the university's workaholic lifestyle, and therefore the willpower and courage to be a strong Muslim becomes that much harder. And the fact that we don't have our parents there to like constantly remind us to pray on time, recite Quran, and what have you, makes it all the more difficult. But how I dealt with this is pretty simple. For instance, I downloaded the Al-Qibla app on my iPhone, and basically what it does, it notifies you every time it's namaz time. And what's even neat is that it comes with a compass, so I can pretty much pray anywhere on the go without having to worry about like my Qibla being off or something like that.
So basically make use of technology.
Exactly.
And whatever you use, like today we use the iPad, we use the Samsung, you know, phones that can basically do everything for us. Try and kind of have an Islamic atmosphere on them at least, because that's what we're carrying around with us all around the world. You mentioned how Muslims are quite strong at not giving in to their values when it comes to alcohol. So what is the kind of cause of Muslims being quite strong? Is there any program or any kind of organization that they go to that keeps them track on their faith, or what would you say is the reason why?
Yes, there is something that actually keeps people who don't want to drink away from that. We found out that one of the main reasons that people do end up drinking when they don't want to is that they have nowhere else to go, and they end up going to parties, go to gatherings where there is drinking. It's usually people who are bored or people who want to go out with friends. So the solution to that was having spaces where alcohol is not there, but the idea of gathering and socializing is still there. So we're one of the groups. We're only one of the groups that does that. As a Muslim student organization, the Muslimis, we actually have events that are catered to people socializing, having fun together, stress relieving on Saturdays after a crazy week of exams or something like that, without the alcohol. So we do have that. And there's also other organizations that are against the whole idea of people having to drink to relieve their stress. We have an organization, it's actually called, I forget the name, it's Williams After Dark actually. The whole idea being that Williams After Dark is that at night doesn't mean you have to drink. You can do other stuff. So they every Thursday night, they have like, the last night I remember they gave out chalk to go do graffiti on walls and stuff. There was positive graffiti and stuff. Or we play with Nerf guns, stuff like that. Okay. Zombies versus humans, all those fun kind of activities that take you away from the whole idea of having to drink to relieve your stress.
So these kind of activities basically promote multiculturalism
and keep you occupied. Because if the only after dark activity at your college is drinking, no matter how strong you are, sometimes you can get into the circles where you will end up drinking. So you need those spaces where people can socialize because they don't want to be lonely, but without drinking.
While in Canada, how did you accommodate your lifestyle to fit your religious obligations, such as fasting or namaz? Did the class schedule you have, you know, create a conflict for this?
Yeah, there was a lot of conflict, especially let's say on Friday prayers. Here we are used to going for Friday prayers every Friday, but when it came up for my classes over there, I had to just wait, and I was trying my best to pray on time, but the time I had my classes, I was waiting. Once I'm done with my classes, I used to go to pray as soon as possible. So in terms of prayers, I mean, I know Islam is very flexible. Yeah, it's true that the mosques are very far apart. It's very far from basically where I'm staying, and especially during Muharram. The best thing I got to do was just to look at the lectures online, and when I could see that it was feasible for me to go to the mosque, I used to go to the mosque. But it wasn't that easy for me because I had my other assignments to catch up on, and the best thing I could do was just look at the lectures online.
Did you ever feel that throughout your time at university you ever like felt distance from Islam or your religion as a whole, whether you're losing some of your faith?
Not religion as itself, but maybe the social life in terms of the community we have. The community we have over here is we always socialize when we go to the mosque here, and that's the thing I was missing when I had gone there, because I wasn't going to the mosque as often. But in terms of religion, it was the same, because we have a special dedicated prayer room in the university itself. And so basically, whenever I'm at the university, I go and say my prayers over there. And I used to meet a couple of people, and I have made many friends there.
So, what do you believe is the general perception of Islam at your university? Is it positive, negative, and does this perception affect your lifestyle in any way?
I would say it's hard to gauge the perception, the general perception of Islam, because there's circles that I have who are very positive towards Islam, even though they don't understand it, but they want to, and they realize that it's a religion.
Despite all the controversies we have.
Controversial things in the media, whatnot, people understand. There's lots of people who understand how the media can portray certain things in completely different ways from what they actually are. So there are people who understand that. And there's, of course, there's people who fall into the media's trap. And there's people who don't need the media to persecute certain people. So there's always those people. But what I will say is that a lot of that, even the people who don't necessarily understand Islam, they have good intentions in that their fear, it's fear. Their fear is rooted in not understanding something and also being afraid of it because of what the media tells them is that a lot of these organizations, terrorist organizations, whatnot, that perpetuate terror, crime, are backed by Islam, which is not true. That's something that the media sometimes portrays, and people fall into that trap. So
why do you think the media portrays it like that?
I actually think there's two reasons that I think that happens. One is that people who actually don't understand the subject themselves, so they're not really fit enough to be journalists or fit enough to portray certain things, they end up influencing their artwork or their media, according by their own personal views. So in the sense that I will see what I want to see, and if I end up showing it, then you will see what I wanted you to see. Not necessarily consciously, but if I feel that, let's say, there needs to be coverage of a certain group of people, and then if I believe that this certain group of people is fueled by religious views, their perspective, whatnot, then I will end up showing that as well. So that happens. That's one of the reasons. The other reason I think is that there's always politics in play, and there's always conspiracies in play. So there's always people who say, well, it's advantageous, or it's economical, or it makes sense to persecute certain people certain times in media because for political gain or economic gain. So I don't know. I'm not going to spend out some conspiracy theories and whatnot. But I think that people need to be more aware. People need to be aware that the situation is more complicated and you can't simplify it sometimes.
We will now have a video to shed some light on this issue.
So, we must ask ourselves, what is the dictionary definition of terrorism? The systematic use of terror, especially as a means of coercion. But what is terror? According to the dictionary I hold in my hand, terror is violent or destructive acts, such as bombing, committed by groups in order to intimidate a population or government into granting their demands. So what's a terrorist? They're calling me a terrorist, like they don't know who the terror is. When they put it on me, I tell them this, I'm all about peace and love. They're calling me a terrorist, like they don't know who the terror is. Insulting my intelligence, oh how these people judge. It seems like the ragheads and packies are worrying your dad, but your dad's favorite food is...
In the wake of the Boston bombing, there's one aspect of the media's coverage that I haven't talked about. The sensationalistic machine that's pumping out fear, racism, and discrimination against one group, Muslims. Take a look.
I don't care if she knew about this. She ought to be in prison for wearing a hijab. This immigration policy of you know, us assimilating immigrants into our culture isn't really working. No, they're assimilating us into their culture. You should get a clitorectomy too.
Who else does that? What other theology in this world justifies murdering innocent people? The answer is only radical Islam allows terror murder.
There are some who are getting very leery of all the The Muslim students in America, our own Bob Beckel among those saying, maybe stop granting them visas. Others have spoken of slowing down the number get into this country, checking them out more closely.
Let me just say this about the access that Muslims have in this country, whether they're American Muslims or whether they're here on a student visa. It is enormous, the access that they have, and it is virtually all radical.
Yes, I know that was all mostly Fox News, but the sentiment of Islamophobia is being echoed across the political and media establishment alike, and has been since 9/11. This kind of rhetoric toxifies the public's perception of the fastest growing religion in the world, one that's inherently peaceful. And unfortunately, this mindset does nothing more than incite hatred and violence against the growing population.
Sure, Islam is a religion, but at the same time, it is a system of world government. And we have to recognize the two go hand in hand. Muhammad wanted to take over. They had jihad to conquer people which they subjugated in order to establish their control.
Right.
And that's what these people are doing. Conquer people which they subjugated in order to establish their control.
Right.
And that's what these people are doing.
Do you feel a sense of Islamophobia at your university or in general around the area?
Not really. I have never come across a situation in which I have been disrespected being a Muslim. And in fact, there are many Muslims at my university, and we have a special, as I said earlier, we have a special room just for saying our prayers.
So overall, the environment is quite Muslim friendly.
I feel respected equally as another person who is not a Muslim.
Not exactly Islamophobia. I've yet to meet anybody who can tell me to my face exactly that Islam is wrong or we hate Islam. But I think the main concern in today's world, what I have seen personally, was not Islamophobia, but religiophobia, where people question the existence of God before they can actually question the existence of a religion.
What about post-Boston bombings? Was there any tension in Canada? I know that the event took place in US, but were there any side effects in Canada?
Well, everybody was shocked and traumatized by that event. Well, you can't say traumatized, but everybody felt a cause of concern. I remember watching it on the news in the student center when it happened, and you could see people just shocked to see what they did, what happened, and
were they able to differentiate between the different type of people, and isn't that an extremist performing that kind of action and it's different from a regular Muslim, or did they have any blame towards Muslims?
Well, not really. I remember specifically watching, and I was with a group of friends, and I remember the anchor saying it is suspected to be extremist behavior, and this was a non-Muslim out of like I had met for say 2 months, and he comes up to me and he's like, you know what? I know you're Muslim, and I know you guys do not do this. I've been around you long enough to know then what Muslims represent, how Muslims represent themselves, and basically just don't listen to it. So I've been lucky enough to be surrounded by supportive people who accept me for my religion, who understand that there is more to Islam than just that small section that people claim to represent.
Yeah, I also spoke to someone recently. He was an American Jew from New York, and he had a similar opinion as you. Okay, so in the US, do people actually follow Fox News?
Fox News is known as being more of like a more like Republican type news channel. Most of the news channels though in the US, like NBC and CBS, are known as being more liberal and democratic, and it's just like you either follow one news channel or the other. And CNN is kind of known as like the divider, but most of the news channels in the US are very biased, and I personally don't watch Fox News just because of how one-sided they are. But,
do you think most people watch it, or like how would you, do people talk about it?
Well, I feel, well, what I hear, most people make fun of it.
Make fun of it,
yeah.
Even Americans themselves?
Yes, but I actually, to tell you a story, I know someone who's an anchor at Fox News, like one of the top anchors. I'm friends with his son, and he told me he started at the job back in early 2000s, and he's a Democrat. And Fox News is known as like a heavy Republican station, and he hates how it is turned to being a heavy Republican station, and so it just shows how things have changed, and he really can't get himself out of it because he has such a good position, but it was interesting to hear that inside information on it.
Okay, what would you say about Fox News' portrayal on Islam? Because it seems that every time there's a event to do with Islam, they'll try to like overblow the situation and, you know, portray them in some sort of negative aspect. Would you agree, or what would you say?
That's like Fox's news. Fox News is like, when you said like how they blow up things in terms of like Islam, they do that with all subjects, and it's just because they're not a very popular news station in America right now. It's more of NBC, CBS, CNN, and they try to do that just to get more media coverage and popularity.
So basically spark outrage just to get viewers.
Exactly, yeah.
Kind of like a profit scheme.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
You know what's really sad is when post such a horrific event, something that is so close to heart, because I'm 3 hours away from Boston actually, and at a point where you actually want to sit down and mourn for many of the victims, you have to consider now what for Muslims. If you have to, that already shows you the state of affairs, that Muslims are afraid that now we're going to be portrayed as bad people again. And before the suspect was found, everyone was wishing, oh, please don't let it be a Muslim, please don't let it be a Muslim. And there you go, it's a Muslim. So that itself shows you the atmosphere, the kind of setting that is the Islamophobia as a looming thing from behind, in the shadows, that is always there. No matter how hard you try, it's always there. And it's just...
That's a very important point. We'll now have a video to show more about this issue.
All we know is that a bomb was triggered and it harmed and killed innocent people. It took innocent lives. That's all we know. And yet instantaneously we have the news. CNN, I was reading CNN's article, and guess what they did? They had an article about the story, everything that was happening, and then next to it they had articles from last year in 2012, early 2012, of headlines that said like Arabs, Islam, terrorism, which this is an act of terrorism, but an act of terrorism does not mean that it's associated with Islam or someone who's an Arab. Big misconception, to be honest, is how people like to throw that out there, is that terrorism is only associated with the religion of Islam. It's insane because Twitter and people are already using their religious and political ideologies to blame other people for this event. And I find it sad to watch every single media outlet, whether it be Twitter, CNN, TV, they use every single media outlet to create their own speculations and create propaganda for their own agenda on their news station or their article or their website.
It's sad because another interesting thing was that post Boston bombings, actually, a lot of colleges around our college, their Jummahs were cancelled. So that it happened to be that our dean was very supportive and said, no, the Jummah congregation will go on. I will come visit, in fact. And we had support from all the chaplains. They visited us. They said, if you want counseling, we're right here. And we actually invited a few students. One of them was from the Caucasus region, where the suspect was from, and he was a Muslim American. And he came to our Jummah congregation because he was bullied and verbally abused at his school. So that shows you that no matter how inclusive certain places are, it's still that the whole idea of the Muslim foreigner, the Muslim terrorist, the Muslim involved with Al-Qaeda, Al-Shabaab, all those things, it's still there. And of course the terrorist organizations are not helping any, but I wish the media did, and it's not.
On the other hand, it also shows that if you have good relations with your dean, then he will, not close down your prayer room or Jummah.
Right.
So it does make a difference at university level.
Exactly.
Which is quite fascinating.
Not only that, it shows you that you can't generalize, because there's so many people who understand. There are people who are so inclusive. There are people who who want you to feel safe and not persecuted. And I really appreciated that. That was one thing that actually made me feel good, that, you know what, it makes me feel good. It's like I'm safe and someone understands me, no matter how violent the things that happen. And I understood that as a Muslim, I too can be sad for what happened in Boston, because there was 3 hours away from me. I have family there. Just because I'm a Muslim doesn't mean I'm on any side. It means I'm on the side for peace. I'm on the side for, please don't kill my children.
What do you believe is the perception of Islam in your university and your area in general? Do you think this perception affects your lifestyle in any way?
Before I respond to this question, I want to make one thing clear, is that there's like two parts to this equation. There's a perception of Islam, and then there's a perception of Muslims. I feel like that should be two different things. Unfortunately, the perception, unfortunately, Muslims have not always been the best representatives of their faith. So when you ask me what the perception of Islam is, I would say there's like an overwhelming ignorance. On the other hand, the general perception of Muslims is that of fear of the unknown, or fear as a result of prejudice and stereotypes. So although there's a growing percentage of the population that understands that not every Muslim is a terrorist, there's still that feeling that many Muslims who would otherwise not engage in terrorist activities themselves are not necessarily vocal enough, or are not addressing it proactively within their communities. I feel like there's that perception that there's a part of them that is either oblivious to it, or condones it, or finds some sort of justification for activities such as this. But like, the general ignorance of Islam is not so much something that we should be fearful of, but rather we should see it, especially us as students, as an opportunity to like, through our behavior and conduct, to be in a position to alleviate this ignorance. And because I believe that the power of like human interaction is beyond the power of prejudices and stereotypes created by mediums such as the media, society, and the education system.
What is, in your opinion, the role of media in presenting or portraying Islam?
Media plays an important role, and most of the media we have today accessible is the Western media. Personally, when I was in Canada, I used to visit the Press TV website for just viewing the headlines. I never used to watch CNN. I wouldn't say specifically, but I wouldn't use the Western media, because I would generally know that they might be a little bit biased. But I basically relied on Press TV because I knew that was a genuine website and genuine news I could get from there. And in terms of Islam, I think they do portray Islam as a violent religion. You'd see whenever an act would happen, if it was by a Muslim, they would relate it to the religion being extremist or violent. But if the same act would have been performed by someone who is not a Muslim, they would have just said that's maybe a freedom of speech, or it's his right to do what he wants.
So you'd agree that there's some form of double standard, basically?
Yeah, there is a form of double standard.
And what about your friends and your social circle? What information do they take? Do they take first-hand news that they get from national media that is, you could say that it's relatively biased, or do they, are they educated enough to consider it as not 100% true?
With what I have come up with in my friend circle, because the news they receive is filtered a lot, and the views what we have is basically two different views, because they have the view of the other side of the coin. So basically there is a misinformation from what they receive there.
Definitely it is an issue we have to tackle when considering the average media a teenager in the US consumes is about 10 hours and 45 minutes a day. That's from television, if I'm not mistaken. What have you done in the past, or reckon should be done in the future now, to kind of tackle this to show the true image of Islam?
Yeah, we have to actually, in my university, we have two main clubs. One is called the MSA, that stands for the Muslim Student Association, that's for all the Muslims. And the second is called the TMA, Thaqalain Muslim Association, that's mainly for the Jafaris. But the events that are held by both of these clubs are basically for the public.
This TMA is a start, right? This
Inshallah.
is how, inshallah, we'll be able to build up more on it. That's why we've started it, because we have the largest campus, but we can't really do anything.
What are the plans of TMA? What's their goal? What do they aim to achieve at the end?
Well, right now we're planning on collaborating them from all different schools. So schools all across Canada. So from McMaster, from York, we're putting them all together. And hopefully with that, we're planning on making a very large network and having events. Like we were just talking about holding an inter-TMA barbecue. And then we're gonna do a Wonderland trip, which is a trip to one of the theme parks there. So I guess firstly, right now, the main thing is to just unite everyone.
Meet and greet.
Exactly, and then see how it goes from there.
Well, I've met over more than 10 people, I can say, who say that I do not believe in God. And you ask them why, and they believe it's a scientific reason that they don't believe in God. He doesn't exist. And on a number of occasions, I ran into a couple of people reading this famous book by an author named Richard Dawkins called The God Delusion. And we believe, actually, we started using that book to refute the claims that God does not exist. In our bi-weekly dua sessions, we have a discussion by a PhD student who works towards Islamic studies, and every other 2 weeks, we discuss a chapter of the book that they claim is refuting the existence of God, and we try to educate ourselves as much as so that we can respond back to them and tell them, hey, this is not what it seems. This is how you can believe that God exists. This is how Richard Dawkins claims that there is no God, and this is where he is wrong.
So you do this within your society or your group of friends?
No, it's between the society. I like to believe that we are friends as much as it is the society, because we try to coexist, we try to work with each other, we try to have social events that promote us as the followers of Ahlul Bayt and not just Muslims. So we basically we actually just finished discussing the whole book that talks about scientific facts that Richard Dawkins tries to prove that God does not exist, and we try to use that to refute claims that, no, he is wrong.
That's brilliant. That's a very good. So you're actually taking the opportunities you have there of the lack of religious knowledge, and kind of engaging and countering it by providing information to them.
Yeah, we believe it's more. We need to educate ourselves more to be able to refute claims that other people make. Like you say, if there's someone with Islamophobia, you can tell him that no, this is not how we present ourselves.
Something concrete to back up
Exactly.
yourself. So you need to prepare a lot more for those kind of counters.
Exactly. That's why we make it a main discussion point. Not just that we try to use any social activities, we try to use any topic that any other member has so that we can attack that problem and not have to worry about it when it's too late.
Okay. So we've talked about this ignorance that exists there.
Right.
What opportunities and platforms do you have in Buffalo to kind of tackle this? What have you taken part in to kind of portray this true image of Islam that you want to be separated from Muslims and their extremist behaviors? And
So, as a member of the Human Society, I make sure that I look presentable, because I know that people base initial judgments on my appearance. So, like, as a Muslim woman, I make sure twice as much that I'm, able to be identified as a respectable woman, as a respectable woman of Islam through my hijab and obviously through my akhlaq.
you mentioned that there was a lack of vocal in terms of, the Muslims who are not part of this extremism, or whoever brings this negative perception, are not loud enough in presenting their true character.
Mm-hmm.
That dressing surely can't, fulfill that lack of vocalness needed. So how would you tackle this situation? Is there any other way you would recommend to students perhaps coming there or students there right now?
For instance, see, I'm a Muslim girl, so and I wear a headscarf, so it's clear that I'm Muslim. So naturally, this would invite people to come and ask me questions. So what I feel is that it's vital that people are like well versed with questions that people would typically ask you, because I feel like if someone comes up to you and you don't know what to say, then there's really no point, So basically what I'm trying to say is that you must know your religion in and out in order to be able to portray it.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
I fully agree with that. And are there any classes or anything, any seminars or that you can participate in over there in order to be this, more knowledge about your faith?
Well, every year at school we have Islamic Awareness Week. And usually they hold it at like the student union where all the students gather around, and they have stalls everywhere to like educate people about Islam, and that and to promote it and to show them it's not necessarily it's not all about terrorism and stuff like that, but rather it's a religion of peace.
You mentioned religious phobia. Can you please elaborate on that? And does this mean that you feel that there's a lack of information about religions? Are people ignorant over there? Do we need to do something? Is there a responsibility on us as a result to act and try promote Islamic values and Islam as a religion? Apologies.
There's always groups like I'll mention a few groups actually. So if you consider the Muslim Student Association or the Muslim Student Union, we're still working on the name, by the way. So if you consider our Muslim student organization at school, we try to educate people and we try to educate ourselves as well. Because the situation keeps changing, it's complicated, you have to understand it and make sure others understand it as well. So we're always trying to do that, but there's always other groups as well. So the idea of having a Muslim chaplain at school, it's not just limited to Williams. I have met many Muslim chaplains at Brown, at Yale, at Harvard, at Hobart, at Wesleyan, so all the schools even around us. In fact, sometimes when we have mawlids and stuff, they all come together. We meet all these chaplains. There's a group of Muslim chaplains. They have an organization themselves, and they get their PhDs and stuff from one of the closed institutions, and they are the ones who are they take care of the Muslims on campus, and they engage them, and they want them to engage their students, their friends. So that's a circle kind of thing, or it's more like a snowball effect, where you push something and it keeps rolling and rolling. So it's a slow thing. It's a grassroots thing. So it starts at the lower level. We don't go talk to the president, but we will come and talk to our friend and say, hey, what do you think about Islam?
Attacking mainly the uni students level.
Yes. So it's a community engagement kind of thing.
Okay.
Yeah. And then there's other institutions where, for example, I don't know if you've heard about Zaytuna College.
No.
So that's a thing. That's a college that was. I am not too aware of its history and when it was started and whatnot. So Zaytuna College is in California.
Okay.
And it was actually it's a Muslim university, and the whole idea being that they teach theology, they teach fiqh, they teach ways of Islam, all that stuff, and they try to educate a wider audience than what we can as a Muslim student organization at a college. So there are other boards, other councils, other organizations that take care of that. They try to perpetuate the true picture of Islam.
Okay.
Yeah.
And would you say they're doing a good job, or how would you assess their?
It's hard to assess because it's a slow process. It's a slow process, and
it's a hard question as well.
It's a very hard question. It's like imagine this: there's a difference between pushing a wall and pushing a wall that's moving towards you. So it's hard to assess because it's something that's growing on both sides. There's more education, there's more ignorance. So it's really hard to tell where we're going with this, but we're trying.
Inshallah.
You can try, right?
Hope for the best.
Yeah, and the Muslim makes the best of any situation, right?
So now we've talked about, the organizations, Muslim organizations that take place within your uni, around your uni.
Right.
What have you done specifically, or what do you recommend to be done to tackle pressures when it comes to compromising or changing your Islamic lifestyle?
Okay, because I have two close friends and they're hijabis on campus. And I think that's kudos to them, because that's very difficult sometimes, because there's a lot of misconceptions, there's lots of ignorance surrounding the idea of people having hijab or niqab. And what I have learned from them is that they don't change their rules or their perspectives for anyone. They're open to listen to people, they will be convinced, but they also convince others. They have their own logic and they follow that logic.
So they're well equipped.
So they're well equipped. That's one of the things. That's actually a good point, is that educate yourself. Yeah, educate yourself. If you don't educate yourself, it's very easy to be convinced by others. But if you're educated, you have your reasonings, you understand, then it becomes easier to make others understand, I think.
So tackle Muslims themselves before trying to approach others.
Yes.
That's very good. Someone else actually said that earlier, built on that idea.
And the other thing is understand some things before you do them, because there's so many things that are required of us. There's so many things within Islam that we do, but a lot of times we don't understand them. So I would say we should stop, move back a little, learn them, and then start doing them, because then it's grounded on a foundation of sorts. Because if you just do them without a reason and you get asked suddenly, okay, so Alibas, why do you wear this? Why do you do this? And you're like, I actually don't know. That makes you question it. So I mean, it's late, but it's still a good thing that you start questioning.
Have you ever been? Have you ever fallen into this experience?
Plenty of times. I mean, I get asked all the time why I eat halal food, and that's something that doesn't come up in Tanzania a lot, because we all usually eat halal food. But then there, you have to make the conscious choice.
So would you suggest tackling these separate issues? You know, understanding the whys and what over here before going out and studying abroad?
Sure. But also once you're there as well, it never stops. There's always ways to get engaged. That's
the Prophet does say, seek knowledge from cradle to grave. Thank you. That's all the questions we have for you today. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Libas.
Thank you for having me.
Okay.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
People have asked me, what are you? Trying to define me by the way that I look. I was purposely bumped into, bothered, for speaking Arabic, simply to assure my parents that I was okay.
I was beat up as a kid because my name was different. But I'm no different than you.
I'm a diehard Patriots fan, like any true Bostonian. I'm a foodie.
I'm a Star Wars nerd.
A math geek.
A marketer.
A dog lover.
And a Bostonian.
So don't treat me any different. We are united. We are one community.
We are one Boston that won't stand for this.